Modern supercars are a real monster. In part, the acceleration of 3 seconds is worth kilometers per hour. In our age, my surprise is no longer such a rarity. Plunging into history, in the 90s I dug among the Japanese car industry such monsters that modern actors of the 911th, Tight Lamp and other supercars would be afraid of. These monsters will be discussed today. Go! But if you want to support my channel financially and send donate for its development to purchase a rare visa for the military contingent in general, everything that makes it more interesting, then my son for writing, but also thanks to all those who support me. I will try to display your message in every issue. So, in order to make a super fast car Japanese in the 90s, so-called basic car preparation was needed. The ideal candidate for this, of course, was, she said, and even in the second half of the 90s she disdains the 30 body, despite the fact that the 34th was already on the way. 30 is a work of art of its time. Back in 1989, the car had at its disposal a computer requisition system of complete nature for these families, which, based on the readings of the sensors, through a hydromechanical clutch with electronic control, connected the front axle. To put it simply, the hook-in power realization was just at a height, up to 50% of the power was transmitted to the front axle. There was even a switchgear instrument, which showed that there was also a supporting rear axle in order to improve the controlled part. Naturally, the delight of the actors was the legendary motor for 26 years. This unit had a durable cast iron block 20-valve blockhead without returning or a hydro condenser. But a couple of city turbines also completed the super motor symphonies. The recoil of 280 forces was only a help for farmers and just a starting point into the world of frantic power. Back in 1991, a tent on the components of the stove, including a piston in the new turbine, which made it possible to increase the volume to 2.8 liters, and the new software with a design power of over 500 forces was able to do exercises 0-300 km per hour in just 26.3 tenths of a second. To the rhythms of God. Since then it has been a real game. To understand this, we open the characteristics with the closest to gain 96 forces on board and accelerate to 100 in a little over 3 seconds. So this supercars makes 0-300 km per hour in protest in 33 seconds. Now think about what kind of monsters in 1991 turned out to be. But these are just flowers, the life from which shone in the 90s was still a wild thing. New turbines, pistons, recovered volume, better release, as well as firmware made it possible to achieve an extravagant 807 villages with not very good grip. Even on dry asphalt the car skidded noticeably, and with all four wheels the size of the first 100 took 3.4 tenths of a second. The second 10.1 tenth of a second, and the exercise accelerates to 100 km per hour to 200. Further I will say, 100-200 took 6.7 seconds. Again, this is faster than the last generation Olympics. In 1990, I tried on a new body. The new generation of 26 motors migrated almost unchanged. However, slightly redesigned turbines have allowed some torque gains to be achieved. The rear wheel steering system was also modernized. With all this, the machine turned out to be heavier and, according to some tests, accelerated a little worse than its predecessor. However, this did not prevent the birth of such a monster, which will replace 3037 turbines with a pressure of 1.8 tenths of a bar. Naturally, it was developed in the Russian release of shafts and other things. Most likely, the volume of the engine was also returned, but to what figure it is not known, but the task of 950 villages is known to be simply the greatest circus for the 90s, and even from 6 cylinders of a new engine. The strength of the 26 block now simply surprises with the most delicious dynamics up to the first 100. Such Hitler said chased and leave only in 2.64 hundredths of a second, the second 100 obeyed in 8.8 seconds, that is, in 6.17 hundredths the machine did 100 and 200. Acceleration from 0 to km per hour took 21.42 hundredths of a word. Such a Turin 33rd can break not only completely new spheres, but also ride at the level of a super Colombardi fool. Into facts mammoths, and you already understand what a level of 2.6 tenths of a second to 100 is the level of today. Kirkarab. And for example, a super powerful sedan in 90. And now think what this figure is for the 90s, what wildness it is, and do not forget all this on a manual gearbox. If you want even tougher and part of the exercise 100 and 200, here is your life from with a capacity of about 1000 horsepower. A bad hold results in the size of the first 100 in 3.5 tenths of a second. For that 100 and 200, the car flew by in 5 whole 11 hundredths of a second. Hurricane of the first team smokes nervously on the sidelines. As they say, but real madness. I will explain further. Meet said online. The site entered the old 30-second body from the office. Well, first of all, look at this aggressive, and most importantly, the car is being transformed. And I drove Nice rims. And for turbines 3037, the power of 26 was over 8,000 forces. And what do we have due to the small Massachusetts? The 30-second body and such a space power, a quarter of a mile flew by the merchant's wife. And that's really the right word, in 9.22 hundredths of a second. For a minute, this late 90s project, exercise 0300, took 13.72 hundredths of a second. Didn't it strike you? I am even scared to imagine how to say I drove 100 and 200, most likely left in 4 seconds. If now the hair stands on end from such data, then, at the time of one massive cliffs and antediluvian mobile phones, it was a real space rocket. If you want to know only by example of salaries, one of the sharpest 90s did 0300 in 22 seconds, and coped with 100 and 200 exercises in 6 whole 2 tenths of a second, and this was considered simply incredibly fast. It's so awesome, super durable and very flexible. 26 comment, right, how much does your car take to accelerate to 100? Well, if you want to continue through the wild Japanese prison of other models, say on Saturdays, smeared, Alexa and so on, then be sure to do it hard. And put your likes, we will collect 11,000 stalls, there will be another issue. Also don't forget to subscribe.